Yura, the Swordmaster, Hachaku, or Parenting. Each of them could potentially end up being the final villain of Kagurabachi. But what if I told you there was one more? Of course, by the thumbnail you already know that's Hiyuki, and I make this video as someone who has the user flair on the Kagurabachi subreddit, Hiyuki's Pookie. So unfortunately I have to say, as much as Chihiro's my #1 favorite character, we ride with Hiyuki. Of course, we've all seen that post by Kagurabachi Brasil on Twitter. He made the connection between all the female characters and their footwear, mostly in regards to how Hiyuki has a similar shoe style or the exact same shoe as the female Hishaku member who was there during the day Kunishige died. And if there's one thing you notice about that scene, there's a lot of fire. I'd like to give Brasil the credit he deserves because I never made the connection between the heels. The fire is pretty clear as day, but the heels is a good connection, and he has his own theory as to how this relates to Hiyuki, but I know it has something to do with sisters. It's pretty cool, so check that out. My theory goes a different way on this. Before we jump into that, I just want to remind you guys to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm back from my short hiatus and ready to get back to the grind of making videos. Appreciate you, enjoy. There's not many panels, if any at all, of Hiyuki actually talking about Kunishige Rakuhira. Yes, she does talk about the enchanted blades, but I don't know if she's ever actually spoken of Kunishige's name outright, or gave her opinion on him. We know she has a strong sense of justice and believes all lives are equal. Normally, these are qualities of the main character or a hero. And I'm not saying Hiyuki isn't a hero, but there's been times in anime and manga where those very same traits end up turning toxic or turning you against the actual main character of that story. So maybe villain is a poor choice of words. Antagonist. Yeah, antagonist. That would be the word that fits better here. Realistically, I don't see Hiyuki actually choosing to want to destroy Japan or anything like that. It's more about her strong ideals being a direct opposite of Chihiro's strong ideals. Two unstoppable forces clashing at the very head of the story. What would that fallout look like? Maybe it takes place on Shokoku. Who knows? Maybe that's because both of their stories start on that very same island. Whereas Hiyuki's connection may be a bit stronger. Maybe she is from the royal family. Maybe it was her parents that were the king and queen that got overthrown. Now, to be fair, for Hiyuki's character being what she is currently, there would definitely need to be more supplemental writing in her backstory that we get later on to further concrete this connection of why Hiyuki would want to protect Japan if her family was royalty of Shokoku. I don't want to just chalk it up to the Kaminabi wiping her memory, even though that is a possibility, especially we know the Masumi started working under the Kaminabi during the Seitei War, so they would have the ability to use that kind of sorcery. That could be an easy answer to fix any connections or loose ends in terms of character motivations. But I also think with Hokazona's ability to flush out characters through an emotional backstory, there could be a setting for Hiyuki to see maybe the faults of her parents, and ultimately she herself was the one to make the decision to sign the treaty and give up her parents. Of course, at that point in the story she would be way younger. Just a headcanon I came up with fairly quickly would be that Flamebone of the Starving is an enchanted blade-like weapon that was actually created on Shokoku. Maybe it's the blueprint of Kunishige's enchanted blades to begin with. That I'm not so sure on, but what if Flamebone of the Starving was the symbol of the king? What if that was the king's weapon and it was handed down to the family member that was currently the ruler of Shokoku? And with how the war was progressing, maybe the king and queen ultimately decided to hand down the Flamebone to their daughter, Hiyuki. Maybe that sword can only be used by a Shokoku native. There may be a different function with it than how Kunishige's enchanted blades work. I can just picture it. Flamebone, the Starving, the garden deity of Shokoku, passed down the royal family, which signifies the ruler of the island. So that sword is intrinsically tied to her, and since she's young, she may be a valuable asset to the Kaminabi in the future. So that was the bargaining chip for the treaty. Stop the war. Overthrow the previous king and queen. Hand over the current ruler of Shokoku with the signifier of Flamebone of the Starving in order to allow the rest of the Shokoku Island to live and continue to have a future. But even though that treaty was made, we know someone came along and changed that. Enter the Swordmaster. Malediction, 200,000 lives now gone, even though the treaty was made. Hiyuki may be in shambles. That strong sense of justice and seeing all lives being equal may turn toxic towards Kunishige and his enchanted blades. Look what they did. Hiyuki may view Kunishige's answer to the world as problematic. Maybe things have changed over time where she stewed on how everything played out and grew a distaste for Kunishige to make this plan to overthrow him, or Yuri comes into play here and makes a deal with her, or just persuades her onto his side to finally get her just desserts and get rid of Kunishige, the guy who made the weapon, the sword that wiped out her entire nation. Or if it is something along the lines of the mind wipe and memory manipulation, the seal has weakened over time, or Yuri's inclusion back into the story is making the seal weaken for some reason. Maybe he has some ties to the nation as well. Maybe he has some relation in all this to the big players. There's still a lot we don't know, but that's like the kind of fun of this headcanon, just to see where it takes us. And ultimately, I could see it coming to a point where, what if all the actual bad guys fall short? But just when Chihiro thinks he's got it all figured out and done, he still has one major obstacle. One person that has said that they made up their mind on getting the enchanted blades back from Chihiro when it's all said and done. That she was going to destroy everything. Chihiro, Rakuhiro, the enchanted blades, the Rakuzaichi. She said she was going to dismantle all of it, destroy it all, tear it down. What if she means that, and at the end, Chihiro will have to face Hiyuki, so not necessarily as like the final villain, but his own final hurdle for his character arc. The thing that he has to prove to himself that his father legacy wasn't all bad. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. And I mentioned earlier about Chihiro's story potentially also starting on Shokoku, but that's a different theory for a different time. So if you are interested in that, let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate you staying for the whole video. Remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, stay normie, stay weeb, shit even in between is fine. Until next time, peace. It's good to be back.